to be an incredible leader, you have to constantly do different things. You're not going to make these super high level positions in high tech at Fortune companies if you're not constantly studying. Constantly. You have to be careful when you're empathetic to your customer or you're being empathetic to the team. You have to find the balance, and then you have to explain why is it that you're changing course.
Hello, friends. Welcome to a new episode of Merging Minds, the podcast brought to you by BureauWorks. Today, I am here with my favorite leader ever. I met this lady years ago. We became close friends. She's helped me with a lot of things. She's always a go-to person. She's a localization and globalization industry star, although she's no longer here with us. This lady does not need an introduction. But in any case, here you are with Miss Anna Navarro Schlegel, Anna Navarro Descalz, the one and only. Hola. Hi.
Hola, Javi.
Thanks for coming to the podcast. It's
Of
so good to have
course.
you here, Anna.
I'm
Anna,
glad we made it work. I'm glad we made
oh,
it work.
where in the world are you today? You're a
I'm in
global researcher
Barcelona.
in Barcelona.
Barcelona.
All right,
Yes.
all right. So that's not far away from the place you were born years ago, right?
Years ago.
Oh,
Yes, years
years
ago.
ago.
It's
No,
February. It's my
I,
birth month.
I love.
Uh, I won't say how many years ago,
It's your
but
birthday soon, huh? It's your birthday soon, by the
it's my
way.
birthday soon. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. We're recording in February 2025 for those listening. Anyway, for those who never heard of Anna, which I think it's very impossible if you're in the localization and globalization industry, I'll allow her to introduce herself because today we're gonna go through her journey from the personal perspective of two friends talking about one's life, leadership, and a lot of stuff. Anna, please.
Very good. Well, thank you, Javi. First of all, it's such a kick and an honor to talk to you. So yes, I'm Catalan and I'm an American also. I was born in the town because it's a town that's called Ulot. Olot, which is where all the main bikers like Lance Armstrong go and train. So it's in the Pyrenees, it's in the mountains that divide France from Catalonia, and that's where I was born. Yeah.
Then, just like most of us, for some reason, in the globalization industry, one day you woke up and you said, I need to leave. I want to leave. You went to the States. How did that happen? Like, tell us what happened? When was that?
Yeah, so I left first for Germany. I left for Berlin to do my postgrad studies from philology. And then from Berlin, I pretty much took off to live in California. And as many of us did, I left for maybe a year. And then 33 years later, I stayed. And I just left California to come back to Catalonia 8 months ago. So I'm going through the reversal osmosis exercise. But I
So
still have my home in California and my kids and my partner. Everybody's still there. So I'm the
you're like
one that
how do you say that? Catalifornian. How would you call it?
I'm a Californian. Catalan.
Californian. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So many like you, like me, we left years ago. Like, can I ask you what? Because it's been now in February, we're recording this in February 25. It's been exactly 15 years since I left. Also, I'm
Wow.
recording from my parents' place. So it's been 15 years for me. For you, it's been way more. But what motivated that thing of like, okay, first Germany, then out? What was it?
I always wanted to travel and see people and meet people. And from very, very young, I would take the train inside Catalonia to go study in Barcelona. And I always met up with people from Morocco and I would always sit next to them when people go like, oh, no, no, don't. I'm the one that will always go and see to the person that I had never seen and slowly start conversation. I'm fascinated by humans from different countries and their cultures and what are they doing. And I don't know, I have this ease of talking to people from around the world. And I left for California. I was 23 years old, and I left for a year, but that year I created my first company, and so it was too fun, and I decided
What?
to stay another year, and
Yeah,
I just
and
stayed.
it's 2025. Do you remember how the world was in 92? And for us globalists, it was a complete different scenario, right? Like for all of us, like Catalonians, Spaniards, like 92 was a great year for us. It was the Olympics in Barcelona. It
Yeah,
was the Expo here. It was like the
yeah,
500th anniversary of the discovery of America
yeah.
too, that we were celebrating as well. What a year. What do you remember most of those years when you were thinking
Well,
like, I like it, I'm leaving?
I remember 92 very well because I had trained to be in the Olympics for the Spanish national volleyball team for several years. And I wasn't chosen to be the final 11 that went to the final games. And so that also pushed me a little bit. I was sort of waiting to see, because we had to wait until the very, very end to see if we were going to make the games or not. And when I saw in January that I wouldn't be in the Summer Olympics, I'm like, this is a cue, this is a sign. I'm out of here. And so I left, and 92, I remember it really well. I landed in the middle of San Francisco, and that's where I stayed. And it was a 23-year-old young lady with no preconceived notions of that I was in the Silicon Valley, that there was something called technology, that I was in an incredible place. But it was so fun. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this place? I love San Francisco right away because it reminded me a little bit of Barcelona, where you can walk and there were shops and you can go get your groceries, and tons of bars and clubs and art and museums and a lot of foreigners. I already met Europeans right away, Brazilians right away. And I think because I created my company, that's what rooted me there. Yeah.
So you are a founder from the age of 23 already, right?
I was, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. So I want to know more about that. Because on the podcast we have lots of friends that come from both sides of the spectrum. People that are really doing well in what they're doing, but they're employed. And there's also a lot of founders that have come and talked about their experience. Tell me what sparked that thing of like, I want to create my company. I don't care. I don't want to work for anybody. What was it? How does one get those thoughts to start a company? Because I want to know. I need to know. I need to do that one day as well.
Yeah, yeah, I've created a couple. So I think it was out of need. I was in the middle of San Francisco. I had very little money, and I'm like, how am I going to survive here? So my first couple of years, I worked at the airport. I worked for British Airways, and in the meantime, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to stay at the airport, although I was having a lot of fun at the airport, but I decided to create this company because I needed to create a safe job for myself, kind of a thing. I didn't know a lot of people, I didn't know a lot of Americans. And I had this idea. I saw two free newspapers in San Francisco. I went to each one of them. On this newspaper, I published that I needed translators and interpreters. And in this other one, I totally made up an agency that did not exist, that did all the translations of all the languages and all the interpretations in the world. And so it took me a year to get it going. And so that first year was really awesome because the ad that was calling for translators had me meet with hundreds of translators that were already settled in the Bay Area, and they were freelancers. And what I couldn't see was an agency that they could go to all the time. So I'm like, I'm going to create an agency. I think I was the first translating agency in San Francisco. And so I called it the San Francisco Translation Company. And within 1 year, I already had a huge hospital that started giving me work regularly. And within 2 years, maybe I had like 10 clients. And then in 3 years, I was like, whoa, this is awesome.
You are
Because
a natural saleswoman as well. That's also true. Like that's the way you do sales, right? Like by need as well, right? Like you
I
need
was hungry.
to do it.
I
Yes.
was hungry. Yeah, I was young and hungry. And I was coming from Europe where at that time we didn't have much. I
Yeah.
remember I had like one pair of jeans, one pair of shoes, one pair of sneakers, I saw my first pair of boots I bought in San Francisco because I didn't have a lot. And so that's how it started. And I ended up employing 5 people, and I had maybe a database of like 500 freelancers. And then 5 years into this, Cisco Systems came in and said, "We want to buy you. What we want this agency, bring it in." Bring it in. I'm like, what is Cisco Systems? What do you guys do? And so they're like, come on down
You didn't
next
have a
month.
telephone that said Cisco Systems on it, right?
Well, we developed that there. That telephone didn't exist, but we developed it during the time I was there. And I went, I saw all these buildings. I'm like, what is this place? They're like, it's called the Silicon Valley. I'm like, holy crap. Okay, so went to the Silicon Valley and I left the company and brought it all in. And I was all of a sudden at Cisco Systems. And I said, how many people work here? 30,000 people. This was in 1996.
33 years ago, or 30 years ago almost, right? So,
And
wow.
I'm like, what do they do?
Hmm.
So I got myself into a next degree. I studied telecommunications. So I have a degree in telecommunications. So all of a sudden I went from being a master's in linguistics to study telecommunications. And that's where I started mixing both arts, which
Yes.
is like technology. All this technology, we had no phones, by no cell phones,
No cell
okay?
phones. No, 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 no.
Yeah,
You
so
had
I'm
the
like,
big ones you had in your car, those like, the bricks, these
yeah, yeah. So I'm like, all these computers, all this technology, I want it in Catalan. How are we going to do this? And so that's what started mixing language and technology. And I have to tell you, already at Cisco, we partnered with IBM to say there's not enough translators to translate the amount of content that these 30, 40, 50,000 employees need to translate. So I started playing 30 years ago or 20 some years ago with machine translation. So this is how long I've been working on this.
wow.
Um, and so we then made the decision to hire an agency. We hired Lionbridge, the first agency that went into Cisco systems. So I've really seen all of it, right? Like the
Yeah.
computers that were this big to like now there are these little phones. And where we couldn't think that a machine could do the translations to all the way that I was working at Google Translate to make Catalan work. And my desire is always Catalan, Catalan. I'm obsessed
I
with
know you.
Catalan.
I know you. I know you. I know you. Yeah, yeah.
But
I
obviously,
love it.
I'm a big defender of all the languages. So um, we started studying like how are we going to make sure that languages go technically around the world. We came up with the crowdsourcing concept, and then we started doing meeting trados. It was like, oh, maybe we need technology. So I went through all of these technologies all the way to today.
So it was from a small village in Catalonia to
Yeah,
California to buy pure need, founding your own business, to
yeah,
getting into the corporate world. And then I know you've worked for some of the biggest tech companies out there.
yeah, I have, yeah.
They're like super important leadership roles. But I want to ask you, do you remember the first one you ever had? Like, okay, wow, now I'm in charge. What the fuck? I don't know what to do. What was that?
Yeah. It was always, since very young, other people pushed me. I never asked to be like, I want to be the manager. Never, ever in my life. I've never asked for a leadership position. Other people would say, you should try this or you got this. I'm like, okay. So the first time I had somebody under me was already at Cisco. They gave me the senior program manager title. I'm like, I'm in charge of telling these people what to do. So they were really good. This is something that I really like about Silicon Valley or many American companies that they train you, right? So they already put me on a female leadership program because we ladies need to manage differently, apparently.
Anna, those
And
were the
so,
90s. Those were the 90s.
well,
Those were
we still have those programs,
we still have those
unfortunately.
brothers.
But
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. True.
and so I was mentored, I think, for 2 years. For 2 years, I was mentored on what it was to start growing teams, right? And so when I went from Cisco to Xerox to VeriSign to many other companies, my teams became bigger and bigger to the point of having like a lot of people under me. But
Well,
it's
yeah.
Mhm.
No, no, go, go. Sorry. I just
No, it's been, I was not, never thought I would be a manager, let alone a global vice president of a Fortune 33 company. I mean, that's
like,
what it,
did you like when I must, I can think that when you were thrown into the lions, there were a bunch of difficulties. Like, holy crap, I cannot do this. Oh my god, oh my god. Do you remember some of the most difficult things that came up on your mind? To because, for example, I'm gonna tell you one of mine. Like, I consider myself as an outgoing person. I love to make new friends, to meet new people. But at the beginning, I was very, very shy to go and talk to an audience and present, for example, the product that I was selling, right? And to me, that was a mess. I remember the first explanation of a product that I ever did was when I was 25 years old, and I was working for a small company firm here. I'm actually at my parents' place, so in the region that I was born, and we flew to England, and I was with one of my colleagues who was just a year older than me, and we were selling radiators back then, radiators. So we get the radiator, like I had seen my colleague do the explanations, the product presentations for the first 3 days, and he tells me like, "Hey, the next one is you, Javi." It's like, "Fuck yeah, you're gonna do it, you're gonna get it, no, no, I'm gonna be the best, whatever." We get in front of the clients. I put the radiator there, and then I put it off the box. I put it on the table, and it's like, "This is a radiator, and my colleague is gonna explain you what it does." Left and I sat down, and I was like, and I still remember this was like more than 15 years ago, and that was the biggest difficulties I had. I got nervous in front of people, and I remember, oh my god! But then I was able to treat that by, for example, being a tour guide. I learned by being a tour guide to tell stories and to tell people and to communicate and to be in front of people. So it it turned out to be easy at the end, right? Okay, so now after this story of mine, can you tell me or can you tell us a little bit about some of those early difficulties that you can remember?
Yeah, the first one was when I got into Cisco Systems and they took me onto my first big meeting where I heard words I had never heard before, like mission and vision and statement and goals. I'm like, what are these people talking about? And so I just like goals and mission and vision. Like, how do these people have these visions, right? And
What
I
do they
think
take? What do they have for breakfast, right?
what we're talking about. Like, yeah. And so I think the same way that I was telling you that I used to see, and I still do next to airplanes and trains, I talk to a lot of people. I did the same thing. I was just me. I'm like, if they put me here, this what I keep thinking, and I've thought for many years. If somebody thought I could do this, they saw something in me. And so I just give myself the permission to be. They want you here, okay, be here, right? But then when you're here, you need to study. I had to study. I'm always studying, always studying. I still study. Like I took a class today, right? I've studied for decades. I would interview people like, what do you do? What do you worry about? What's important? Always listening, always learning through looking, and then realizing that there were some great leaders and some leaders that people didn't like that much, right? And so what do they do that I like? What do they do that I don't like? Was very much my first 10 years, I think, of repeating or mimicking what some of these awesome leaders. I mean, I would have breakfast with John Chambers,
Wow.
was the CEO of Cisco. And so, how does this guy talk? How does he sit? How does he dress? You know? And then when I would see a female leader, I was really hungry to understand who are they? How did they get here? And again, just by talking to a lot of them, I remember a friend of mine that started more or less at the same time, and she left for another company. And I'm like, you can leave for another company? And so she called me and she said, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but I'm faking it till I make it. And so I would grab these concepts of like, okay, somebody's faking it until they make it. So maybe I could fake it until I make it. And
That's
so I
just
would
pure
grab,
imposter syndrome. That's complete pure imposter syndrome. And I know where you're coming from
yeah,
because actually a common friend of ours, sorry to stop you there, but this is very interesting because a common friend of ours was telling me exactly the same words you said right now. He was saying, like, I have some doubts about this, I have some doubts about that. Take it till you make it and you'll figure it out. And it's okay. So I guess this is a problem of of mindset and of
yeah, you can fake it for so long, right? I mean, you really need to put your batteries on and start studying what's important because you're there to make the company very successful and your manager very successful. I met with the CFO back then from Price, and he told me, Anna, you only always have one job. And I'm like, what is it? And he said, to make your boss look good. And I'm like, all right, so where is my boss heading to? That's, I need to wrong, I need to go that way too. I can't go against it. Or start talking to my boss or have access to these people was always very interesting. I think if you come from a curiosity place and a humble place and a service kind of mindset, it opens a lot of doors. Empathy opens a lot of doors, and studying opens a lot of doors, and seeing things that maybe they're not seeing and saying them correctly opens a lot of doors. And knowing when to speak. I had to learn that very carefully because I would speak in meetings and maybe I was out of turn. And so I learned a lot to talk to leaders outside of the meeting or go and say like, hey, I heard you say these, have you ever thought about this, right? And because I engage quite a bit, they would go like, yeah, go figure it out.
And you ask the question because have you thought of that's I think that's the first step to empathetic to be an empathetic
Yeah,
to be an empathetic leader, right? So that's I think the asking the questions is key, right? I'm like I've learned from you, like honestly from you and from a couple of other friends that you know, like to ask questions, do not impose anything that you think could be right because others have other perspectives, and it might also be okay, right? But if you ask questions and you expose your sorry you talk your opinions in an empathetic way, then it changes the whole game, right?
you have to sound it out. You have to be very clued into the room. Do they want me to talk now? Are they looking for answers? Do they don't want to be interrupted? Like there's a lot of leaders that don't want to be interrupted. There are some leaders that are super welcoming of ideas, and there's always a place and a time, right? You're not going to do it in a QBR. You're not going to do it at a performance review, but in the working meetings, you definitely can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, can you share a specific moment in which you thought I'm being super empathetic and we're gonna go my way in a good way that's good for the company and for all of us? Do you remember any of those? It doesn't have to. We don't have to go back to '92. You can think of.
No, yeah, yeah. No, I can go last year. I can go this year. I
Okay.
mean, I was at Procore Technologies. I was the vice president, the global vice president for Procore Technologies, which is a Fortune 50 company. We're number 33, where everything is customer based. Everything. We had to talk to customers, and we wanted our teams to talk to customers all the time. I went to visit Vestas. It's a great customer in Denmark. And I came back to the States with, we have to do this because the customer is suffering in some specific temperature conditions. And I went to bat for this customer. And I was being very empathetic to the customer, not necessarily to my team, because my team was working on something else. And I came back, I'm like, we're going to change direction. And so you have to be careful when you're empathetic to your customer or you're being empathetic to the team. You have to find the balance, and then you have to explain why is it that you're changing course, right?
So and this you mentioned about working in. I mean, I'm working in some of the biggest tech companies out there, and I was thinking as well because I follow your posts always on LinkedIn, and you're always like you're the founding member, the founder of Women in Localization, and unfortunately, tech has traditionally been a male-dominated industry, right? And
Mhm.
can you tell us how have you navigated gender barriers, and what advice could you give to women aspiring to leadership roles?
I'm still navigating them. I mean, it's something that we haven't figured out yet. So, Women in Localization was founded 16 years ago.
16, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
16 years ago now, yeah. And it was because I went to talk to a leader at VeriSign because I needed more budget for our team. I was the executive producer already for the web team and for localization and metro, I don't know, a few things. And I kept trying to talk to a leader. And I thought maybe if I went to a woman, I don't know, I had this idea the conversation will be easier because the culture back then was pretty harsh, but I couldn't find any female leader. I could not find one single female leader. And in talking with Sylvia and Eva, who are the co-founders of Women in Localization, I said, maybe we have something here that we need to start helping each other and talk to other women in other high-tech companies in the Silicon Valley to see what are they going through. And so we started, three of us, 5, 10, and it took off like rapid fire because we put the finger where it hurt, which is women have I'm a graduate of five universities, Javi. Five.
Hmm. Hmm.
American, German, Spanish universities. It doesn't matter how many universities, how many classes, how much learning I have done. I'm still treated as different,
Hmm.
And in high tech, women in leadership at the C-suite or senior vice president level is like 2%, 3%, which means that 98, 95% are male.
Hmm.
And so when you're in a room with guys, and I grew up with a father that made me run marathons, and I only have brothers. So I'm very used to being around guys, and I think it helped me a lot. Some people don't like me to say this, but it helped me a lot to grow up with siblings that were pretty rough, that you have to understand how men interact and do business. It's different many times. I'm just going to say it is different
It is
than how
different.
it is
Yeah,
different.
it is
It
different.
is.
Yeah.
This is my
It's
opinion and my experience of
like
many,
I
many
agree
years.
with you. I agree with you. And if I can give my opinion here as
Yeah.
well, like it's when you talk, and this is like when you talk to your male friends, you don't talk the same way as you talk to your female friends, right? So I guess in leading and in other aspects of the corporate world, there's you gotta be different. You gotta have a different approach to
You
each
have
other.
to find your style and your approach and your way. And I always thought if I'm well prepared for every single meeting, I've had thousands of meetings, right? With these guys and I became very apparent when I became executive producer, director, senior director, vice president, global vice president. You go up, 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 up. It gets lonelier. There's fewer women. And it's almost like a selected few. And it's not okay that we're a selected few, right? I've had incredible male bosses, that have been so good to me. But it's almost like unnecessary. The way they were good to me was they were like, what does Anna think? They had to make space for me at the table that my voice would be heard. Um, and again, it's not enough. And one of the degrees and one of the studies that I did was at Stanford is gender studies, and it really helped me understand how we as children, boys play very differently than girls play very differently and grow up very differently. And so it puts things in perspective, and it gave me a lot of tools to learn. It's been this constant learning
Yeah,
because
it's
the
very
meetings
I didn't know. I know you for personally for a long time, but I didn't know that
that
we never spoke about this. You mentioning that growing up with male siblings helped me a lot to understand
a
that
lot, yeah.
perspective. So can I ask you, like, for those ladies listening today that haven't had that experience as you had, can you give them some advice? What advice would you give them?
Study.
Study.
But study hard. I was looking at some video from a professor in NYU that said a lot of people are great, but to be an incredible leader, you have to constantly do different things. You're not going to make these super high level positions in high tech at Fortune companies if you're not constantly studying. Constantly. I mean, I've been given 50, 360s. I've been studied, I've been coached, I've been trained, I've trained. It's just a constant learning on. I remember when they told me you're now a vice president at NetApp, and I'm like, and now what? And so I got a coach, and he told me there's different styles of leadership at a high tech being a vice president. And we studied some styles, and I tried and I found the one that I liked the best. And so study. Getting up there for women, unfortunately, today, it's really hard. And so, what do you want to study? You want to study how to listen. You want to study how to have the best teams. You want to study how to have the best teams. Your teams, one thing that I learned is they're going to make you or they're going to break you. Your team can break your career. And so you want to be surrounded by the best. And so I learned that at a university in Chicago that was already for senior vice presidents, and it was only females, where they taught us how to sleep, how to eat, how to train, how to think. And one of the days was study who do you have in your team and go ahead and let some people go or
Mhm.
find them another position because they will prop you up. Right.
And you know what that makes me think as well, that there's a certain, there's big chances of failing also despite studying and stuff, because I don't know, because sometimes just you don't create the right opportunities, or you cannot find that right people or whatever.
Mm. Oh
Can
yeah.
you, do you remember
Oh,
some of
all
those
the time.
experiences?
Oh, I've
Tell
made
us,
so.
tell us.
The best is to make the mistake. The worst is to let the mistake linger, right? And so I made a mistake once when I was at NetApp of not letting a particular person go from my team for almost a year. You know, this person was my friend. Oh, we were very friendly, and it was a technical architect, and he was fine with me, but I didn't know he was causing a lot of trouble with other leaders in my team under me. And I read the book of the five dysfunctions of a team from Patrick Lencioni. We brought in a corporate psychiatrist to study my team, to study me, and we had to do a lot of changes because at some point I am a vice president in a $6 billion business unit. You cannot mess that up. So it's really on. You know, you're in charge of a lot of people, a lot of money, and you have to perfect it. It's the way I wasn't born to lead this amount of stuff, right? So I had to get there with classes and with coaches and by listening. And then once you have all the information, you get a lot of analysts to help you and a lot of consultants, but you make the decision to move forward.
Anna, I could be speaking with you. We could be speaking here for 3, 5, 6 hours, but I know we want to keep it to 30, 35 minutes. And of course, I know you're busy and have stuff to do. You left the the globalization industry last year, and
This year, oh yeah, 24. Yeah, yeah.
it's 25 already.
It's 25. Yeah.
It's 25. Where did all this time go? And it's your birthday soon. Oh my God. So listen, what's next for Anna Schlegel? What is she doing now? What plans does Anna Schlegel have now? Can you share it with us?
Yeah, so I'm in Barcelona, I'm in Catalonia, and I became a member of parliament because I was asked to run next to our president, and I was voted number two, and we're there. I'm in the parliament every week, and it's an honor to serve your country. I never in a million years I thought I would get into politics, but I was recruited, as it always happens to me. Come
What's
over
most
here.
important? When will you run Football Club Barcelona? That's what we all care about.
No, they're run by my friend Joan Laporta. No, no, they're doing quite fine.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, he's got to step up to some things anyway. We have that's a separate conversation anyway.
I'll introduce you to him whenever you
Ah,
want.
please, I need a photo with him. 100%. I'm going to Barcelona soon. You set that up for us, okay?
I will.
Anna, like any final words you'd like to say, any type of advice that you like to share, because like we've known each other for a few years, and in the pandemic I was running some online events and you were a participant, and people would give me extremely good feedback on that advice specific that you gave leaders. And I have a couple of our current clients who come to me like, I love Anna, I love to talk to her, I have her book on by the side of my bed, whatever. So I know they're going to listen to us. So, is there any type of advice that you'd like to share today with those, especially with those female leaders, that those females that aspire to be leaders or that just landed on that position by chance? Is there any type of advice that you'd like to give before we say goodbye?
I would say the same way you train a muscle, right? If you want strong arms, you train your muscles, train your head. And you train your head by learning how to listen, how to write, how to be brief. So there's classes for everything. And so go deep on all those things and build yourself stronger and stronger. And it's the orchestra of all these little pieces. How to manage team virtually, how to write a great review, how to be a great leader. Take all the classes and take different classes, different things. Yeah.
So study, like Anna said, study, be empathetic, go do things, fake it till you make it for a bit, but keep learning. And what great pieces of advice you've given us today, Anna. I'm so thankful. I am proud of calling you one of my closest friends ever. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the friendship. Thanks for everything. Thanks for being here today as well. To all of you listening, thanks as well. And until next episode of Merging Minds. Bye.
Bye. Adeu.
Adeu.